Hello there folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel, a place where I discuss different topics like introspection, spirituality, deeper introspection, game analysis, dream analysis, and well, other topics that people might find difficult or challenging to provide themselves with the answers or to trust in the answers they already know. And well, they might need some confirmation or someone else to just support the same idea, because to face it simply and straightforward, society and well, things nowadays, there are so many things to know, so many things to take into account, so many possibilities of understanding, but well, we also differ because each of them will be applicable only to some of us. Now the topic of today is the mind, and well, the fear that the mind has, mainly the only fear that the mind has. Now, what is the mind is something probably that's gonna take lifetimes to understand, so therefore it's not gonna be easy to provide with any definition, especially since definitions are just a sort of, meaning that we attribute to things, and meaning is nothing else than something subjective. Okay, it's something that we give to things so that they make more sense to us, but sense is kind of a self-destruction button. The moment you create sense in your life, you have a feeling of power that represents you, and this can be quite tricky because the mind has multiple layers of it, and there have been, ancient masters saying that, in order to understand your mind, you have to understand several thousands of layers that the mind has, which portrays the mind basically as a labyrinth, right? A labyrinthine structure filled with all sorts of dangers and the such. And it's a bit problematic because people can easily get entangled into the aspects of the mind. Now, the mind as a structure within us, okay, the mind only has one single purpose: to aid in our survival, to aid in our existence, okay, to basically help us survive. Okay, the only way, for example, animals use the mind is only for survival. Okay, all the knowledge they acquire, all the tactics, all the information that they have about the environment, okay, their friends, their social structure, and everything related to their survival is, always given a place in the, consecrated mind. Okay, the mind is consecrated for that, and its purpose is that of survival. Okay, the mind is representative of the first three chakras of the body. Okay, and the first three chakras, the lower ones, are basically the chakras of the physical body, okay, which are the chakras of survival. Survival on the physical plane, which is the Muladhara, survival on a somewhat emotional and social plane, which is the Swadhisthana, more like social plane, and family relations, relationship with other people, relationship with life, and also creativity as a part, because creativity is a way of, it's a relationship with life, shortly put. And then you have the Manipura, which is the chakra of the solar plexus. Actually, is the chakra of the chest. Okay, well, more like the belly, I can say. And that is the chakra of self-control. Okay, and it's basically the survival of the mind. Okay, or the throne of the ego, because the ego is basically a part of the mind. Now, in order to understand a part, okay, of this universe, okay, in order to do even the slightest action, someone needs an ego. Okay, highly successful people and poor people, they all have their own egos when they create or do something, because you need to channel something, okay, in order to create. You need to keep a certain flux of intellect, okay, open, right, from consciousness itself, from creation or source, whatever you want to call it, to you, and you basically become the receptacle, but you're also the channeler at the same time. Okay, now how you do that? Usually you do that with an ego. Okay, like multifaceted beings, well, more awakened people, let's say, they know that they have multiple facets within them. Like in my case, I have a destructive part, I have a very nurturing part, I have a caring part, Okay, there are different aspects, okay, and there is a difference in between nurturing and caring, okay, because caring in my case is I can take care of other people but not imply too much emotion into it, okay, being something almost neutral. But well, there's never something fully neutral because you always have at least a tiny bit of subjectivity, okay, which subjectivity means meaning. Meaning means words, and well, words are the weapons of the mind. But the mind is just like a tiny beast. The more you feed it with words and concepts, okay, this is identification. Now, identification is dangerous because the mind's only power, okay, the superpower of the mind is that it can show you things, okay. Anything the mind shows you, it's always very convincing. Now, if you don't believe this, take your fears into account. None of your fears are actually true because the fear is a projection of the future. It's just a possibility. And well, if we think in the time, in the past, how many of our fears actually became real, right? And how many did become real, but honestly, the more time we spend thinking about those, it's like we're actually trying to manifest them into our life because fear is a very powerful emotion, and most likely you're going to use, all sorts of imagery. And imagery is called the language of the universe, right? So, powerful imagery with powerful emotions, it's like that's what you want in your life. Now, why do you think society functions based on the principle of fear and also the aspect of worrying? Because worrying actually makes you a very evil person. Because again, when you worry about something, you're imagining all sorts of possibilities that most likely never happen. When your child goes away in a long trip by car, right? How many of those scenarios you imagine where they might end up in a car crash, some madman crashes into them, I don't know, a bridge collapses with them, and all sorts of that. You're sending so much emotion and so much imagery to the universe. It's like you're willing for your child to actually die that way. That makes you quite very evil. Fortunately, people who aren't very, awakened in a way, let's say, who aren't capable of their creative potential, well, it's good that these people do not have too much of an influence on the collective existence. But to speak about the mind, okay, the mind as a structure, okay, as a construct, okay, the mind simply exists as a survival tool, okay. We use our mind since we are born to simply gather knowledge. But when you gather knowledge, you identify with it because you can watch a tree, a bench, any object, any person without actually any identification. Once you are not identified with a tree, you are not capable of calling it a tree, but you're still, and even you're even more capable of feeling that as a being, because the moment you call it a tree, you're only calling that bit of information or like that bit of code that you have gathered, right? So when you call names to something, okay, it's like in programming you're calling functions, okay? Now the purpose of a function is a block of code. That is a block of code, okay? A function in programming is a structure of code which runs as a whole. Now, the purpose of a function is to be called every time you need it. So instead of writing a certain bit of code several times, you just write it once and you call it every time you need. Now I'm speaking about programming because ever since I woke up to programming, okay, and started doing a bit of it, I've realized that, well, I was thinking about the mind and our internal being just like a sort of mega code that is, basically the intelligence of the universe, which is basically what allows us to exist. Our body has a code that constantly runs. Each and every function that our cells and our organs and we as a whole are doing, it's nothing else than code which is run. Now, yes, it is run subconsciously, just like when you're creating a game, you're using libraries, right? When you're using Unity or Unreal, right? You're using some sort of libraries, okay, which means a condensed code. You're calling that code because you need it, but you're not building it, which is also a bit of a limitation. It's the same principle with calling concepts, okay? When you call something a TV, okay, you're calling that a TV and you're basically summoning the code which says, okay, this is all you know about that. Okay, so this tends to become and has become over the time a lot, like very superficial. Why? Because people, when they call it a tree or a bench or something, is just like any other dumb object. Okay, people don't think that, hey, because of those trees we actually live, right? Like, if you want to try an exercise of meditation, just go near a tree. And if you get capable enough, you will realize that the tree, and realize, not know, okay, because knowing is one thing, realizing is something superior. You'll realize that what you breathe out, the tree will breathe in, and what it breathes out, you'll breathe in. Okay? It's an exchange that goes on, and many people don't take that into account. Okay? They take it for granted. And now, as a punishment, we wear face masks because the ignorance of previous generations, as well as these present times generations, impact all of us, irrespective of how much pain and damage we have caused or not. So the point about the mind is multifaceted. Okay, the mind is only usable for survival because when someone moves into their heart space, what some people might say, they experience a so-called ego death. Okay, now speaking about this concept, I can't take it too seriously into account because what they say as an ego death, okay, the ego doesn't vanish. Okay, this is something that ancient masters have spoken, and even today some people who know tell you, but there is no such thing as ego death. Okay, the ego will be less of an impact upon you because what the ego basically is, it is a compulsive nature. It is an impulse, okay, that you must do a certain thing, right? When someone does something bad to you, you will react to that. That is basically an ego. Okay, you have identified with the trauma from your past and you have reacted. Okay, now the mind works on, let's call them, four basic levels or four main levels. Okay, the first three of which cannot be controlled because they are way too fast. So the first one is cognition. Okay, now what cognition means is identification. Okay, you don't know something, you're identifying yourself with it. So basically you're integrating it into your mind. Now, cognizance is what, for example, school does or your parents do when they show you something for the first time. Or when you are learning it for the first time, because when you learn how to learn, which is one of the trickiest and most important thing in the world, when you learn how to learn, you're basically creating a list of algorithms, okay, that you can base yourself upon to simply, expand on your knowledge. Okay, so the first step is cognition, basically identifying something which you don't know. Okay, it's a new element. Now in programming, this goes as something called an array. Okay, now what an array is basically it is a collection. It is a collection of stuff, to put it like this, or a collection of data. Now this collection of data broadly expands more and more, which is called a vector, which means an array that, it can expand its own, limit, okay, its own number of datas, okay, of IDs within it. And an ID is basically any entry that it has, okay. So a collection can have X amount of entries, okay, but an array is a fixed one. When you create it like that, it's like that. You cannot expand on it, okay. Technically, there are ways to expand it, but you're creating a new one. Let's not dive into programming. And well, let's say that the mind works very similar to that. Okay, so it's always checking on things. Okay, is that thing actually known? Think about situations where you hear a sound. Okay, you don't know what the sound is, but your mind is definitely taking all the sound bases, okay, that you have in your subconscious mind and in your conscious mind, and well, it will return a true or false answer, just like in programming. Is it some sound that I know or something that I don't know? It can be a false positive because you might take it as something, and then when you discover the source, it's something completely different that sounds like something you thought you knew, right? Not to forget that there's also potential fear, okay, which is the the mind will always fear that which it does not know. Okay, that is why it is always so bent on, learning and learning and learning. And the more unconscious a person is, the more subconscious a person lives. Okay, the more you will see that they are bent on knowledge because the mind gives it at least a sense of safety. If not, it can give a sense of safety, because once you know a lot of things, people will have this impression that they know things, and they will feel somewhat powerful. But yes, knowledge indeed is power, but knowledge can be accessed from the universe in numerous ways, and Akashic records. And when you do that, you also don't inject that information within you. Basically, you don't use your mind, you don't correlate with the mind, you don't identify with concepts, because the more you do that, you're basically feeding your mind more ways to screw you over. Because think about it, how many people can actually stand still for 5 minutes without thinking anything, okay? And at the same time, they're actually thinking something that they are already inducing a limitation, okay? They're introducing a rule, okay? I must not think about anything. But think about this, the mind always functions in reverse. Every time you tell it to not do something, that's when it becomes even worse, because that's when it will work even more. Now, people might say that, they can't meditate. Well, it can be used as a pathetic excuse, but meditation is not using the mind, okay? But at the same time, meditation is not ditching the mind either, okay? Meditation is all about embracing your thoughts and letting them flow through you. Same with emotions. Now, one thing that most people and school and society won't tell you is that your emotions and your thoughts are kind of the same thing. It's just that thoughts are much faster, okay? Their vibration is higher. Well, not higher, but they have a, let's say, faster frequency, because a thought comes and goes. But emotions, when they come, they always linger for a long while, and it also depends on how much theatrical plays the person is doing in their mind. But well, yeah, that's a point. I mean, based on that, be careful how you use your mind, because the mind, the more you feed it, the more ways you are actually giving it to screw you over, okay? So the main power of the mind, okay, is to show you whatever, okay? The mind usually functions on the subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind has everything stored in it, like the black box, okay? So once something is stored in there, it is compared to see, is it something new? Well, then cognition. If it is not something new, then it is triggered as recognition, okay? And that's how you have the word to recognize, okay? Recognize means taking something into account that you already know, right? And this is also a sort of adaptation, because that's how reflexes are born, okay, and sharpened, because the more you think of something, the more you practice something, the faster you are in reacting towards it, right? The body also works like that. If you think about, let's say, the immunitary system, when there is a new virus, usually in newborn babies, right? When there is a new virus, it's all about cognition. The body may take a longer time to react to it. That is why some vaccines may be required, or some sorts of medication, because while some of them can be bad, yes, I'm not going to dive into vaxing and anti-vaxing, the point is they may actually improve the chances of survival. Now, when it comes to some cases, I heard that some children take even 70 vaccines. I don't know if at a time, but that's like a whole lot of them, okay? Like, I would say that is way too much. But at the same time, there are pros and cons, okay? Both of them have to be taken into account, okay? When people become pro-vaccinations or people become against vaccinations, well, that's identification. That's another way of your mind screwing over you. Why do you think society works so much on distractions? Video games, music, things that dumbs you down, fears, worrying, all these are just identifications. The only reason you're suffering is because you're identifying yourself and your body is telling you to stop doing that. That is why it's making you feel bad. It's the only reason. So the point about this, okay, when recognition triggers, okay, every time it triggers, there is a faster and faster response, okay? Just like with the immunitary system, every time a virus is identified, okay, and it is known, the body will react to it much faster. That is why people who are, sick of a certain disease once, twice, 3 times, well, they will simply become more and more, powerful towards that. They will become more capable of dealing with that. Now, in some cases, okay, the point is people become capable of actually bearing the virus within them and actually transmitting it to their infants, which actually shows as immunity. If you go to India, for example, or I don't know, some African countries, you will require a lot of vaccinations to make sure that you don't suffer from some of their deadly diseases. But those people are mainly highly resistant or even immune to those because in their bodies they already have that virus which is fully adapted to them, and their body is adapted to them, and it's holding them under, a careful control. Now, if the body is not properly taken care of, this imbalance might lead to the virus becoming, more aggressive. And, well, yes, even people who are apparently immune to a disease, well, they're, basically gonna have some partial trouble at least. Now, recognition means, recognizing something you already know, right? The first time you hear a song, you most likely won't like it, or you like it, and the second time you hear it, you're gonna react to it, right? You're gonna like it or dislike it again, and then again and again and again and again, right? And you'll always react even faster and faster every time you hear it. And at times you might actually become, partly psychic, in the sense that you might even foretell, like that in the next, I don't know, 2 or 3 seconds, you're gonna hear that song. It might happen, okay? Now, this is not part of recognition, but it can happen. Now, the third part of the mind, I don't know exactly how it is called, but is the emotional part, okay? Part of the emotional, or the emotional part as a whole, because once you cognize or recognize something, the third part of the mind, the third layer, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it, will create an emotion. Now, what that emotion means is, well, very, very easy, okay? What that emotion means is a reaction towards that, okay? It is a kind of a reaction, okay? It's not necessarily a reaction, but it is the way your body may react to that, okay? Now, the fourth part is reaction itself, and this is the only part one can actually control, okay? Because someone scares you, okay, with a gun or something or whatever, and the body will react. You might even feel frost within you, and why this feels and why you feel chills is because that idea of hatred, okay, that idea of of murder or whatever, okay, imposes a very great imbalance in your body, okay, and your body is 70% water at least, okay, and this water within us simply reacts to all emotional bombardments, okay, because everything has a length wave, okay, even machines around us, okay, all radiation around us, Wi-Fi and the such, they have a slight impact on us, okay, more or less, right? Like, let's not get paranoia, but they all have a slight impact on us, okay. Yes, I heard even about 5G and the such, but let's not dive into such things, okay? The point is that everything has an impact upon you because it's like basically feeding off of it. Even what you eat, what you watch, what you hear, it's just energy that you're taking in, and it's just like a code that it executes in, okay? If it's lower vibrational, well, it will drop your vibration. If it is higher vibrational, you'll probably enjoy it, okay? This also depends per individual, because I don't know, if you see happy children and you're feeling bad, you're probably not going to enjoy their happiness, or you're probably going to smile and enjoy the moment. It all depends on your awareness, your perception, and all sorts of such ideas. So the power of the mind is very complex, okay, and based on these 4 principles, hopefully people become more aware of these, and reaction is very powerful because reaction usually comes from a lot of things, okay, the logical part of the mind, okay, usually that, because a lot of things, especially when they make sense to you, one has to be very careful, because if something makes sense to you, you're already identified with that, and the intellect works on the principle of always defending your beliefs. Okay, that is why you will see a lot of unconscious people. They don't know shit about life, but they're fully fanatical over something. Okay, they might even go berserk on you. Just like with some people, okay, if in their minds they have already identified with the fact that a face mask, for example, protects them, they will even police other people, they will even fight other people, okay, because the more subconscious a person is, the more you know the more comfortable they feel, okay, because the purpose of the mind is survival. Okay, the mind seeks two things: survival and, of course, comfort. Because if it survives, it will look for comfort, okay, the comfort zone, right? And, well, the main impulses have to be dealt with, and, well, breeding and eating, let's say. And, well, after you've eaten, you'll see that after animals eat, for example, all they want is comfort, right? They roll around, or I don't know, they find some spot and they just rest, okay? When the necessity comes again, they will simply go again, right? Foraging for food and the such, because it's always comfort and survival. And usually the two don't go well together, okay? Because survival is an impulse and comfort is more like a necessity. And what a necessity means is always calling onto something that you don't really have, okay? Because animals don't have comfort, okay? Now they might have comfort in your own house, but in nature they never have comfort, okay? They just have the comfort of a satiated belly, okay? But they never have comfort because there's always a danger lurking around, okay? And that's how things are in nature. So to normal animals, okay, to animals as a whole, survival and comfort, they're kind of, antagonical in a way, okay? And comfort, if it is called as a need, okay, it means acknowledging that you actually don't have it. Because when you need something, you are actually invoking something which you don't have, okay? When you want something, it's again a need. You want something because you need it, right? But need it tends to be a bit more neutral in my point, and want is a bit more like aggressive, okay? That is why I call something like when you invite your friends in, okay, do you want them, or do you need them, or do you simply welcome them? Okay, that shows how much codependency you might actually have, okay? Not necessarily as a disorder, because there's a lot of such codependency needed to reach the disorder. Okay, so all these being said about the four layers of the mind, now the point is the mind has this power to always show you something, and it's always something fearful, okay? Now the mind, usually an untrained mind, lives in the two only tenses that there are in this world, because there are only two tenses in this world. There is the past and the future. As I've been presenting these, okay, the past only belongs to regrets, okay? And, well, the future belongs to worrying and fears, okay? And vice versa, okay? Regrets belong to the past, and the past is all about regrets usually, because usually people think about the past because of regrets or because of good things they have performed, but those things cannot be changed anymore, only your perception towards those. Okay, this is very important when you are, doing what's called shadow work, and, you're healing certain things. Basically, silly ways of having identified with certain concepts. Okay, that's what healing basically is. Okay, you hate someone because in the past you have made a powerful attachment or identification with something that resonates very well in that person, right? And the purpose of that person would be to remind you of said thing. So the mind can screw us in so many ways. Now, to speak even further, okay, the mind and, well, its power. The mind is nothing evil, but also the mind is nothing good also, okay? The mind is just a tool that you have to use. All these people you hear around claiming that video games are evil, or cigars are evil, or anything like that, those people have a very powerful entrenchment, okay, a very powerful attachment to this balancing idea, of positive and negative, good and bad, which is kind of the premise of religion also, because many people suffer in life because they always believe that whatever they are doing is bad, okay? Whatever you are doing is the best you can at the right pace for you, okay? This is one of the quotes that I keep telling people, because, well, that's what basically is. You are doing the best you can, because many people think about the past and, swear themselves, they take themselves very rough because, well, they perform something. But they never think about the past as it was. They think about the past from their present situation. Okay? If you would know that thing, if you knew that the things you know now, in that time in the past where you're judging yourself that you've acted bad, well, I'm sure you would have been awesome enough to not have done those. That's why I'll always say that you're doing the best you can at the right pace for you. Okay? And at the right timing for you, because, well, if you try something and you fail, well, that's only a stepping stone for your getting better. When I started game design 20 months ago, well, I completely sucked because I never knew anything about RPG Maker. And, well, I learned a lot of things, and now I'm overhauling the codes of my game and the such, because I've learned much better ways, much faster and somewhat optimized ways of performing certain things instead of having lengthy, painful codes. Okay? So you see, the mind usually functions on the principle of knowledge. Okay, people who are stuck in their mind, they become somewhat dominant because they believe that the mind is the only way to perceive life. Mind is a very powerful tool, but not used correctly, it can be very dangerous, just like a cigar. Well, I can't see a cigar as something bad. Okay, sure, it does bad if you smoke it, but just because it is a cigar, you don't necessarily have to smoke it. Okay, you're doing that, you're taking that action consciously. Okay, you're consciously putting that cigar into your mouth and you're smoking it like consciously. Okay, so that's the point. That's how it actually goes. I don't know, you can give the cigar to someone, right? Like, sorry, I don't smoke, right? Is this something good? Well, if you think in good and bad, you'll always be hit with the bad because you'll always be thinking about the bad part. But people don't understand that there is also always something good and something bad, right? First of all, if you give a cigar to someone, you're doing something good. Why? Because you're doing yourself a service. Not smoking that cigar is something good. It's a service that you bring to your body, okay? At the same time, you're probably doing something good because that person might actually have needed the cigar. Okay? Or, I don't know, the person might have needed to go again through the test of should I smoke it or not. There are thousands of ways you can interpret things. That's why I don't call too much to the mind, because I don't want to be, mind fucked, so to speak. So, the point with the mind, okay, and this example, yes, it could be a bad thing if you really like putting the bad inside, because, well, you're making the person you're making that person a disservice, right? Well, it's actually wrong. Because you see, even in the Bible it is said, and I'm not much of a fan of the Bible, but even there it is said, don't blame the devils, okay, for tempting you, because it is you who consciously accepts something. If you're giving that person the cigar, first of all, as I said, you're doing yourself one favor, and probably you're giving that cigar because the other person asked for it. One of the wisest things I've learned is never help someone without their asking. Okay, because this is another tedious, horrible part of the mind, because when you help others without their request, you also build, at least subconsciously, expectations from those people. So when you want to help me without me asking you of that, well, then we kind of have a problem, because you're basically asking me to use you. You're asking me to make use of you. And then you're having an expectation that I do something for you, but I never asked anything from you in the first place. So you see how twisted and awkward the mind can become, because I'm sure people are knowledgeable of more, but they sometimes need to watch videos or something to, really resonate with them and, have that spark, pop up into their mind. So, the point is, the mind can screw us in all sorts of ways, but when you give the cigar to someone, okay, if they asked you, you're doing a favor to yourself because you're not smoking it. You're doing them a favor because you're giving them the cigar. What they are doing with that cigar, it's their responsibility, okay? It's their own responsibility. If they smoke it, well, what's your concern? It's their consciousness, okay? They consciously took that decision, or if they are living unconsciously or subconsciously, if they are living subconsciously, well, the point is very simple. they are living subconsciously. Okay, so who cares? They're living in impulses anyways. And if you don't give them that cigar, they're gonna buy one anyways. Okay. Oh, sure, you'll feel bad because you gave them the cigar, but don't feel. Don't feel bad because it's not your problem. Okay. Like, it's just the same thing with a gun. Okay, you have 10 people, you give them a gun, one of them most likely will use it to kill someone. Okay, now let's say 1,000 people or broader, okay, but one of those people will be the most prone to kill someone. Okay, is the gun evil? No, it's not evil, it's just a tool. You can use it. You can kill someone much faster if you really want to kill them, like, unlike with a knife, okay, or other ways of killing, but well, that's the point. Okay, mainly a gun was made to kill, yes, but does that make it evil? No. The person wielding it, well, kind of. I mean, you can do a lot of things with a gun, right? You can do all sorts of tricks and such, preferably if it's not loaded, because you don't want an accidental unloading, but you can do all sorts of tricks, flips and the such with the gun, roll it on your finger like in movies, right? So it's just a tool. Just like that, the mind is only a tool. Everything in this life is a tool. Even your friends are tools that you are using, because everything is usable in this life, and you're actually making use of to enhance your perception and your knowledge of life and to make your life better. When you're feeling sad, you're calling your friends, right? You're in a way making use of them. Yes, language is a bit restricted because it might sound that you're actually making use of them. You're not using them necessarily, but to a certain extent you can actually take it like that. Because, relationships, okay, are kind of, okay, it's a bit far-fetched, yes, but, it's kind of a reciprocal helping, okay, let's not say usage, okay, but a relationship is or should be bidirectional, okay. I scratch your back, you scratch mine, okay. But in many situationships, because that's what many relationships are, people are something like I scratch my back, you scratch yours, okay. So yeah, so the mind has one big fear, okay, and many people will say that the fear of the mind is that of the unknown. Well, technically that's more like a conscious fear. It's not necessarily that of the mind, okay? That is more like when you are aware of things and when you are too identified with things, you're always gonna fear the unknown, because yes, the mind will always seek comfort zone. Now the comfort zone, what means is stagnancy. What stagnancy basically means, it means death. Because if you don't accept change, that is a way of dying. Okay, think about all the people who are just doing the same thing again and again, right? They are living the rat race. They're always rushing to reach nowhere, working a job that doesn't serve them for some money that's probably barely enough to survive, and they're doing the same thing again and again and again, and they're expecting change. This kind of sounds like the definition of madness, okay? And going beyond this lunacy, okay, because I'm not here to categorize people. Going beyond this, okay, the idea of comfort zone is basically the opposite of change. Think about all those people who rage in video games, okay, like especially MOBAs, when their one-trick pony, champion gets changed, okay, usually nerfed. Many start moaning about that because that character becomes their comfort zone. Why many people fuss about that, okay, is because they identify themselves with sucking, okay. Because school teaches you that you suck, school teaches you that it's bad to make mistakes, it's not good, your parents may do that willingly or unwillingly, and you're gonna be raised on this principle that whatever you do is wrong. This kind of sucks ass because it is actually very dangerous. Once you identify with a certain thing, your intellect will always fight to support those things. You actually have specific neurons in your mind whose purpose is to make sure that they always pinpoint those things which support your ideas. So if you think that you suck, okay, people might tell something insignificant, something innocent, but just because you're so identified with the idea that you suck, well, that's going to be a big problem, because, well, you're going to interpret things as if you're going to interpret that as if people tell you that you suck, right? Which is even worse because people, once they identify themselves with something, they will even fight for that. That is why you have so many people fighting to preserve themselves in that lower self-esteem, in that, problematic existence, because, well, that's basically how things go. So, is this something good or bad? Well, again, I cannot say that it is something good or bad because it's your subjective way of using the mind, okay? The mind is just a tool, okay? But nowadays you have a lot of people who believe that they suck. They strongly believe that they suck, and they would fight for it as if it is their own life. That's the power of identification. When you are so powerfully attached to something, okay, this becomes a problem. Why does this become a problem? Because when you're fully identified with something, you're becoming capable of, dying for it. But, dying for something, right, being capable of dying for something is synonymous to being capable of killing for something. So that is why you have people who, when they identify with something, they're willing to even die for that. And, well, you have a lot of subconscious people who don't have much idea of life, but they're fully entrenched in certain things, and they will die for those because it is their comfort zone. The comfort zone means something that doesn't change. That's how it is for most people, and that's why many people are actually poor. Because if you embrace the comfort zone, you're never gonna evolve. If you don't evolve, you're dying, because death is the opposite of, well, there is no such thing as death, there's basically life and change, but, well, not embracing change is a way of dying in a way, because, well, that's how things are. So, change is basically the only constant. If people can build enough, structure inside of them, and, they become capable to understand that change is the only constant, okay, and change should be the only comfort zone, okay? There are some twists in there that should be avoided or gone through to be experienced and then adapted to, but come again, that's one thing to go. That's one way to make sure that you're making another big step towards your liberation. Now, what is this mysterious fear of the mind that I have been speaking of up till now? Well, that fear of the mind is, well, what technically the mind is basically nothing, okay? The mind is a white space that we fill with all sorts of thoughts, feelings, emotions, and the such, and especially attachments and the such. And again, those exist in our minds based on identification. Once you identify with something, well then, you're identified with it, and it will occupy a space in your mind. The mind also has the purpose to minimize, because when you want to explain things like life, okay, life cannot be explained. It is something far beyond the mind, because the life is basically beyond the 114 chakras that our body has, okay? So it is basically far beyond the 3 chakras that represent the mind, okay? When you give a definition of life, it's just minimizing it to a sense that the mind can understand. Also, one reason why dreams don't make too much sense is because they are a translation. Okay, there are numerous dimensions to the mind, and, well, each makes sense to their own specific. Okay, so the point about the mind is, don't dwell too much into it and don't try to understand it too much, because it has so many layers that can screw you over. Okay, so what the mind basically is just a white space or a black space, whatever you want to call it. Okay, it's just an empty space. Okay, and this empty space we fill with all sorts of things because we are programmed to accept so many things since birth. Now, those programmings aren't necessarily bad, it's just that we are not also taught how to make them better. Okay, we are not taught how to become better ourselves, okay, how to better ourselves. And the mind, in a way, okay, the mental body is different, okay, but the mind as a whole, which is basically kind of the only thing that the Western societies are placing so much accent on, the mind basically is kind of an entity, okay, and what we put in it, it will react to us, okay. Now the problem is the mind knows that we kind of don't need it. That's something a bit deeper maybe, and the mind knows that we kind of don't need it, okay? Only a small part of us needs it, because the mind is just, I don't know, less than 1% of who we are, dimensionally speaking, okay, and multifacetedly speaking. So, all this being said, the only fear of the mind is that one day we will wake up and realize we just don't need it. It is the only fear of the mind, and it's kind of the only reason why it is accepting to, use all sorts of distractions. It's just like a little narcissistic friend, okay, or a person. It just wants to give you everything possible, okay, when you personify it, okay, when you identify with it and you make use of it. It will always do whatever possible to keep, to draw your attention. That is why it is also called the monkey, right? The monkey mind. Because it is like a monkey. It will always do whatever possible to draw your attention. So all this being said, hopefully you liked this video, and well, feel free to like and subscribe, feel free to share some of your wisdom with me, feel free to share this with people whom you might have some difficulty understanding, because you know how people are, you want to help them, but you're part of the family, so they won't be listening to you, or they're your close friends, so they won't be listening to you. So, well, feel free to share some of my videos with them. Probably they might help them. Different opinions may help more. And if you can't help someone with something, don't invent something. Just send them to a person you might think they're capable of helping them much better than you can. And well, hopefully this served as another awakening beacon. And all this being said, you are loved and appreciated. Take care of yourselves. Ferenc Jan Bor signing out.